And just test this. Good afternoon, everybody. Are you well? Is that too loud? You can certainly hear me at the front. Have you got a clicker? Right, this is about my limit on technology prowess up here today, I'm afraid. So I shall keep on time, I promise. So I'll go through this quickly because I do want to give you this in various sections. I've segmented the presentation. And thanks for obviously attending, and it's good to get a fresh perspective on how the Irish community is taken to BIM. I've been around the circuit, as they call it, in the UK for a long time now, been to every event, so it's really nice to hear a whole set of new ideas coming through. I'll keep our introduction fairly brief. There's two parts to the business, what Damien described as the CG studios and also the interactive side, but the whole idea is it branches out and it should take advantage of what you're doing, which really is why we're so involved in BIM. So I'll tackle the elephant in the room first of all, because I know some of you will be thinking, what's a supposed CG company doing at a BIM event, but we've been heavily involved in the BIM community in the UK for a number of years now. That's been, implementing BIM has been my background for the past 12, 13 years as it's evolved over the years, and it's can almost come full circle to one of the things I did start doing when I got into modelling, and I seen the process challenges that we faced as an industry. So we do the pretty pictures, so let's just get that out of the road so we can move on. We can do that all day long, but as I'm going to describe when it comes to doing BIM, and BIM themes a lot of our work now, which again maybe won't be obvious if you look at our website, because there is a lot of pretty pictures on there. But you have something to say with BIM, and you can take advantage of it now while you're developing strategies, you're investing a lot in it, you're learning, you want to court new business. And although a lot of the benefits won't be realised for a few years, you can't afford to wait that long, so there's a lot of things you can do to leverage that. And for us, even with an image, the outcome, that's a nice image, isn't really what we want. It's what reaction do you want. So you invest time or energy in anything like this, whether it's an image, a movie, or anything else that you can come over to your stand and see. You want to influence some outcome, and there's lots of these that you can affect with a good BIM process behind you. Okay, so the trouble with BIM, why are we now finding a bigger and bigger market in the BIM community and within the industry? Mainly in the UK at the moment, because that's a primary market, but we are going global. Our clients in the UK are taking us to the Far East, the Middle East. They love their gadgets. They like to know people are operating an efficient business process. They like the way things are done in the West. They like certain aspects of the business culture. What can we do to increase that connection? Well, there's a couple of things, and I've certainly been immersed in it for so long that it's only really when you step back and see it from an outsider's point of view that you realise we do get caught up in our jargon and our technicalities. Now, the construction industry tends to be like that anyway, but we don't tend to take that to the outside world. We don't go to community meetings and start talking about all the construction detail and kind of very specific design elements that we use behind the scenes, but there's a tendency in the early stage to bombard the world with different views of BIM, and then it becomes unnecessarily confusing. Now, I haven't had more than my head in here because I've been out at our stand today, but I'm going to take a wild guess that some type of these or variations of these diagrams have already been on screen, and it's everybody's interpretation. You type BIM diagram into Google, you should do it, it's a laugh. You get everything as well as a few recognisable faces that spend too much time doing it. So the industry gets it mostly though, so a variation of that is probably right, because BIM is different to different people. And we are all still learning, so let's address that as well. BIM isn't a static thing, it's a process, and it should be evolving, it should always be increasing in scope and capability. Okay, and it's another language. Again, much like construction, but if you just look at BIM, the amount of jargon and new terminology that gets bandied about. You've heard the term BIM wash. There's a few other less polite terms that I wouldn't use up in the stage that get bandied about now at conferences, and they're all accurate and they're fine for us to use. So I think everybody in this room in conference can quite happily have a conversation using these. I've been to every Revit user group in the UK at some point or another. I sat on the UAC UK standards committees, and you could have a 2-hour conversation using just those types of words and it would be fine. However, if you go to your key meetings, you face a client and you use that sort of language, you leave them befuddled and bemused. So that's what we're talking about, is making the effort to work out what that means for the people whose decisions you want to affect. And that's my favourite, all the Ds, that just keeps going. We will get to 14D shortly. So again, not in any derogatory way. If we look at technical competence now, the design team or the design and construction team competence is the focus for us at a conference like that. That has to be quite high, and it has to keep moving, regularly, and it will change as the solutions and the methodologies change. You might get a little bit of competence on the client side, so an educated client is a great thing. That's another responsibility and another reason why I'd be standing here saying, why should you worry about presenting BIM? Well, you can help your clients understand that you do that, you set up a good relationship for the next however many decades. But the other people down there that are kind of low on that graph, they don't really care about their technical competence. Right? Generally, apart from a few clients, they really do not need the sort of knowledge that we need to drive the industry. So really, the theme of my presentation is what we talk about in the technical side, what you're investing time and energy in delivering value for your clients. How do you make sure that affects the commercial discussion? What affects the industry's destiny, globally and in Ireland, and of your businesses specifically? So we're talking about just making sure the process is profitable and that you're winning the right business with the right clients in a profitable way. So it's how do you invest that and turn that into a commercial discussion, because it's that room of non-technical people that typically all these decisions are made, whether it's how they proceed with a project or awarding that project in the first place. You've got a lot to offer and sell. Stakeholders, again, another graph where showing the same thing. The influence of BIM typically, because of the way we tend to talk about it, or we do in these circles, and that's our first objective, is to understand it as an industry ourselves, as a delivery process. Then the project team and some clients get it, right? But there are easy enough ways to extend that so that you're touching that wider group, and quite often they're the high power, high interest stakeholders, that the ones that you've got to manage carefully. Right, others can move position in that matrix, but the ones who you have these regular magic moments and you can't give them anything too technical. You've got to do the work in presenting it. Okay. So the other misconception, and I've seen this a lot myself over the years, I probably made it myself in my younger days, is that just because you have a model doesn't mean that's done the presentation for you. Right? And it happens over and over again. People take to clients what they do in an internal project review meeting. So that's fine. You should be able to bring up a model, all the detail, and review it with the team and get better outcomes from that. But just showing that to a client, what you're throwing at them is even more technical data, a more complex model, umpteen layers of information, and data. That's not the easiest thing to make a decision on. So again, it's know your audience, stop and think. It's a bit cliche, but it's true. How do you make sure your audience understands what you want to get out of the room, them to leave the room understanding about your whole proposal, whether it's the construction, the design, or your operations and maintenance strategy? Okay. So why should you care? I could do a huge set of bullet points for this, but I'll keep it succinct. More business, because these are the moments that you've got to shine. We do a lot of our work now in the bid market, and that's where I've seen a change. I've spent 12 years doing very technical BIM implementation in the Autodesk channel, but all manner of companies. We are now dealing with the same companies, but we're now focused on work winning, bids, senior client presentations, and getting this right and theming BIM into that, because so many of our presentations now, there's maybe a walkthrough, but more now it's a video, it's a theme, or it's BIM capability, and that's growing for a bid or to show a client why you're the partner to work with. Less abortive work, because the client understands it. Show them CAD drawings. You're not really sure that they envisage what you see in your mind as the end result. Show them a complex model and umpteen spreadsheets attached to that. You're going to get the same result. You've got to translate it, but we're talking about doing that with minimal work, and promote your BIM capability. If you're spending the time doing this, again, individually and as an industry, you want to sell that to the world. It's marketing. You're doing something that offers value, capitalise on it. Okay. So the quick process example I'm going to use is courtesy of our friends at the back at NBS. They're kindly running the video up there, and we do a lot of these. The reason I can show this one is because it's a promotional video. All the companies that John listed, we tend to work with these companies, contractors, and we look at ways of presenting their BIM strengths to their clients and on projects, but obviously that's their defined USP. So this is a good one to show you, because this was a relatively early one, or a recent one in the process. Can you kick that video off for us? So I won't play through the whole thing. So this is a mixture of styles using CG, motion graphics, data overlays, and it's even incorporating Revit footage. So the guys are playing that up at the back, but it's a good way of telling a story about the complexities of BIM in a non-complex way. So I would advise you to speak to the guys up at the back or come over to our stand, and you'll see how it draws out the message in quite a nice way. So that runs for about 4 minutes or so and tells a really good story, but it is indicative of a lot of what we do. Okay, and we can give you access to that one. So as we say with every job, if somebody says come and do a walkthrough, we do get those requests, but that sets an alarm, right? Off in our minds, we want another conversation. What do you want to achieve, and what's the story behind this? Because there almost always is, and if you get that time to think about it, it will transform the outcome. So the guys at NBS had a very clear idea of what they wanted to tell. Was this not obvious story about the value of data going into a model from specifiers and designers if they had this library? So we basically took the value of what BIM provides natively anyway, the Revit model. So that's there, that gives you a saving, it means you can do things more quickly, and then we build up the visual quality as far as necessary. So you only go as far as you need, but again, that's one of our strengths that we pull in from the studios. You pick out the key messages. So again, the fact that you could pull specification data from the web, the fact that all the objects have got data on them. So again, presenting that in a clear way that relates to the real world rather than our technical platforms. And then even showing that, the COBE data is in there without opening a spreadsheet, just to show the value and how, it conforms to industry specifications. And ultimately, it's a good outcome that the guy's using. It helps them tell a relatively complex story in a straightforward way, and it matches a lot of what we do with our contractor clients and some of the other developers, where it might be what we've spent a lot of time developing is an off-site commissioning methodology. We want to present the value in that. It could be a laser survey assisted asset management strategy. How do we convey that? Or it could be something that's going to affect the operations of a large property, where it's radio frequency tags that allow the operations of the building to move people and equipment and save wasted time and cost. You'll save hundreds of thousands, six-figure sums yearly doing something like that. So presenting that can be a lot more important than just showing what the scheme's going to look like when it's built. And as we've got out there, is exploring options for the engagement. So what we did with that model, because we had it wasn't a big thing, we could create an immersive version where you could walk around it on an iPad or using a games controller, get inside it and really etch that experience into the minds of the stakeholders. So we do a lot of that as well. So our last little bit, again, is taking it into the world where the client sees you as not speaking in your language but speaking to them. So it's using the business etiquette of iPads and smartphones, which again changes all of that. You just change the conversation when you open a laptop, open an iPad or an Android compared to a laptop, and it should be easy to do this. If you're doing everything else, then this isn't costly. So it's individual interaction, making it a personal experience, that they feel confident that they understand exactly what you're proposing. We've done quite a lot of group engagements for various things, public consultations, getting over community issues, the sort of things that might be hampering a development going ahead, reassuring people, and on bids as well, is actually getting people up out of their chairs and inside your proposal. It's gold when it happens, and when it works, it's absolutely magic. and augmenting reality. So taking bits of that with the real world, what's going to be here, what do we propose to be in this room, how is our hoarding going to be, is it going to be visible from across the street? Again, with the right models, simple bit of technology, that should be more than achievable. And it can be used just to impress, just to get things, or in this case we're using a very simple iPad app to ship model updates to China for our client in London, and it works a treat. Right, so there's no other way they can do that, but it's a very simple thing. So the outcome that we go to in selling your story, is just to bring everybody forward and make sure they understand it, but just get that personal reaction. So this is where even the senior people in your business, you've got to convince them to engage with BIM as well. They're not going to be sitting there with copies of the software, be that interested, but if you give them a model on an iPad that they can show off in a bar or a golf club to their client when they're out in the Middle East, or they go out prospecting for business more widely, then that's where they really see the value in BIM and where it resonates. Okay, so that's me done. The only thing I'll say there is if you want to come out to the stand and have a go at any of this, there's iPads and our banners set up with augmented reality, and there's a free portal that you can use to try some of this yourself. And other than that, have a look at your website, and thanks very much for your attention. Okay.
Thank you, John. Sorry, Scott.
Thank you.
I'm surrounded by Johns this morning. Thank you that was a great presentation. Some very exciting images, signaling a lot of data sloshing around in the system. And just a comment, but there's huge dilemmas for the BIM community in as what data to generate and where you put it and who's going to use it, and so that in the end that everybody's had a go at using it without the recreating wastage that we're talking about. So it's some interesting challenges. I'd like to take a few questions from the floor if there are a few. Gentleman in the front.
Yes, Simon McGuinness from DIT. Have you experimented at all with using avatars as a way of exploring building models?
And are you thinking about anything exactly? My voice is probably not loud enough anyway, but I'll use this just for the sake of modesty. In terms of avatars, the thing that we do find a lot of debate over the use of BIM caves in the UK. Some of the big universities have done them, which I know is a slightly different thing, but it's that whole, how far do you take the immersion? So the feedback we've had on the caves, where it's literally a room built in where you can look around, is initially been good, but it quickly wears off and they're horrendously expensive. You're at least 5 figures, if not 6, to get these things built, and they're not particularly portable because they're at that location. So there's different ways of doing that. We can do without having a physical avatar, because what we do is harness games technology, which for just graphic quality and network performance is always going to be ahead of what the construction industry's offered in terms of solutions for that level of detail. So we tend to tap into that so we can have multiplayer experiences effectively, but have a real functional element to them. So we've had this with a road network in the Middle East where a number of people in different locations could drive. I think there's no real limit on it. I think at the time we limited it to 12, but you could drive along the road and then shout somebody to come and see where you had driven to, and that's pretty straightforward. The other thing that we're doing at the moment, which is just that one of my other directors in New York with it at the moment, is the Oculus Rift headset. I don't know if any of you follow the kind of BBC News Click programme, but it's been in a lot of the technology journals where that's a different type of VR headset, and it is totally realistic. So there'll be a consumer version of that out soon, and that changes things considerably as well, because it's only a couple of £100. So where there's maybe a hygiene factor of passing around a VR thing, if you want to engage your team, just get them one each for a fraction of the cost of a fixed facility, and that is really impressive. You're literally in the space, and you can design any of the functionality that we put on a PC into that. So it's worth, I'd say anything's possible. That's our attitude, and a lot of what we develop is because one of our customers has come up with it.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
Next question.
Sorry, back at you again. The reason the avatar issue arises because we have a suite in DIT where we can actually do virtual classroom, and everybody logs on and they walk into the space and they receive a presentation, and they can talk, they can video each other at the same time. But it would be tremendous if that technology was available to architects to actually show a group of potential investors around a future building that doesn't exist anywhere except in virtual reality. So the idea that I could do a guided tour of a building to 10 or 12 investors, and each one of them would actually log in and be able to walk around and look behind the screen or look up the stairs or whatever it is as we're going around the building. That's the thing I think that would actually make the sell much easier in terms of BIM. It's impressive for clients anyway, but if they can interact with the model by walking up the stairs or looking in the whatever room it is, that's when it really begins to take off.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely worth a more detailed discussion, but yeah, absolutely, that's pretty much all there at the moment anyway, because when the models are there, we put it in the network for putting on an iPad even, and we can do that. It's actually easier on a PC in a network scenario, and then things like the headset or the cave, whatever. In fact, that's just a way of connecting with it, so that's just an alternative to a monitor. So it's worth a chat because there's nothing prohibitive in that, and you're right, it's a very easy way to get that out, and it impresses people because you're giving them the reassurance that you're getting to see, try before you buy. And it does come down to some simple marketing in that sense. You just want the right decision, so that's definitely the way to do it. I'll throw in one question myself then, because I know some of you will be thinking it, and I know everybody out there asks it. Yes. Well, I'm sure I could get some guesses, but I can guess where the guesses, the range. It would be cost. How much does it cost? Because there's always a look at these things, and it's, yeah, but I'll bet that costs a fortune. The thing that I'll say, I mean, obviously not going to say a price because it depends what you give us and how much you want and how well it's planned. But if you're doing your thing, producing good models, have a good process in how you do that, then this should be four-figure sums, a lot of it. And if you do it repeatedly, there's a lot of the elements can just be reused and reused. So again, you can come and see some of the examples. But even if there's a specific thing you're doing at the moment, which you know your clients want, then you only need to do that bit, and if it's working, do more of what works, change it if it's not. But yeah, we're not talking about a huge investment to start leveraging what you've got to develop more business, which is the thing that will give you the confidence to keep doing it. Okay.
Well, I think that would probably draw the morning session to a close at this, but just before we do, I'd like you just to show your appreciation to our speakers this morning and some very interesting presentations, and thank you for the discussion as well.